What do you know about compaction?
You're going to tell us.
I'm not going to tell you what you already know. When we talk about compaction, and there is a lot of tires, people that deals with tires that are going to tell you that if you buy that type of tire, you're going to have less compaction. Have you heard that before?
No.
Some tires will compact less than others, right? Okay, we have to understand that there's two types of compaction. There's the surface compaction and there's the subsoil compaction. Okay? And how can we define the surface and the subsoil? What's the difference between the surface and subsoil?
The depth?
Good point. How deep is surface compaction?
6 inches?
6 inches? I've got 6 inches here. Anybody else? Anybody better? If you don't answer at all, I will ask you to stand up. Because I think you're just sleeping down. And that's why you avoid talking. 8 inches? 4 inches? Anything else?
2.
2. The surface compaction is the depth of compaction I can deal with the machinery, right? Tillage depth. So if I plow my soil in 8 inches, the surface compaction is defined as being 8 inches. Then the compaction below it, I'm not doing it, I'm doing anything to it. And the surface compaction is really related to the pressure in the tire. So we won't have time today because it's something that takes a few hours also, but one exercise that we do with the farmers is we want to balance their tractor so to have the right weight in front and in the back so that we have the maximum traction, and then we try to decide the maximum pressure, meaning we want to lower the pressure as much as possible to have the less surface compaction. And this is quite important because the surface compaction will have a big impact on pulverization.
Yeah, and water infiltration as well.
And water infiltration. And root growth at the surface.
If I may with that also, the obvious difference between the two is that surface compaction, we see it, it's the obvious compaction. Subsoil compaction, there's no way to tell that it's happening apart from seeing its effect on the crops. But I can tell you that in all the regions we've been across, subsoil compaction is way beyond a much bigger problem than surface compaction. The rots and things that can be managed with chisel, plows, anything like that. Subsurface compaction, subsoil compaction, the freezing, thawing won't do, or crops, they do nothing against subsoil compaction, which is more permanent than surface compaction, of course.
Because to break it, you have like thawing and freezing. What does it take for thawing and freezing to be efficient?
Water.
Water. If my soil is compacted, what it is lacking of? Water. So you cannot count on freezing and thawing to break compaction because it is compacted, you don't have that water that's going to break it out.
Besides, it's very often we don't see freezing beyond 5 or 6 inches into the ground, especially when there's snow on top.
So, surface compaction related to pressure in the tire. Subsurface compaction is related to the weight per axle. What is the optimal weight per axle? 10 tons. Maximum 10 tons, and that's 10 American tons or English ton?
When it's dry, eh?
When it is dry. 6 tons when it's wet. And so what we have here, what we did is we put some pipes, 3 different pipes with water in. The first one is 24 inches deep, the other one is 16, and the third one is 8 inches. And this tractor is weighing just about right now, the way it is now, it's just about 5 tons per axle in front and in the back. No, in front is
26 when the harrow is down, 2600 when the harrow is down, and 4400, 5400 when the harrow is up.
That's just one side though.
no, that's both sides.
Both sides?
So it's 5 tons in front right now this way, 5 tons in the front, and just about 10 tons at the back in the back axle. So I could say right now that it's not well balanced, but usually this tractor will work the way down, right? So we're gonna go in front with that, and you're gonna look at the impact. Of course, you can expect to see the water rising in the 8 inches. But do you expect it to rise in the 24 inches? Who said no?
I don't remember that. This is 24 inches?
Yeah.
Okay, 24, 16, 18, and 8.
Wait. Let's get rolling.
Action?
Action! Okay, everybody's ready? Now, what do you think? So it's not a very heavy tractor, it's not a very heavy equipment, but yet it has an impact down to 24 inches. And 24 inches is something that you won't be able to go get. And we're talking about 10 tons per axle.
And I can tell you the soil is very dry. Huh?
So if that soil was wet, would we get more surface compaction and a bit less?
Water cannot be compressed, you know? Air can. So with the wet soil, it would have gone higher.
The weight,
On all three?
Perhaps more so for the deepest one, but still an effect for the shallowest one.
you know, the weight has to be taken off by the soil. So even though sometimes we're been told, like, if we have 2 wheels, do a wheel, then it's gonna go less deep. It goes as deep as only one, because the amount of soil necessary to hold that weight is the same amount. So by adding a wheel, you might go just a little less deep. We talk about 1 inch less deep, but you're gonna gain it in weight, in width. So every time we use machinery, we do have an effect on compaction. And this is only what we wanted to show with this little exercise here.
You see the difference between the two? surface and subsoil compaction.
It's really
And even with the caterpillar type of equipment, it's the same principle. It's the weight per axle that makes the difference. Surface contact, the number of inches, square inches per tire doesn't change anything about the subsoil compaction. But it does for the ruts and the surface compaction.
So reducing tire pressure gives you a benefit just to the surface.
Yeah. And also it's important to, we didn't include that in the program today, but we have a workshop on like Odette said, about balancing the equipment. And then tire pressure becomes important in terms of lifetime of the tire, you know, wear outs, and you know, it's traction also. It gives a plus there as well.
They're all subsoilers?
There's no more
Just two.
Okay, not this one.
That was this year's.
Yeah, if we're talking about subsoil compaction, it doesn't make any difference between single, duals, or triple tires. Even though you increase the contact surface, the surface, doesn't change anything because the weight per axle is actually, it might be a little bit worse because you increase the weight of the axle. Whenever you put more steel, you know. So there's a lot of confusion about that, and you know, no wonder that we see so much subsurface compaction nowadays. That's because, you know, people didn't care as long as they didn't see any signs of compaction, and they, you know.
It's just because when you have more tires and balloon tires and so on, you don't see any mark on the soil. And again, if you don't see any mark, that means it doesn't do anything in the back of the soil. But just think about it. Would you let the tractor goes on your feet here? No. So it has something has to carry the weight, and it's the depth that does that.
To further demonstrate that, usually we ask for a volunteer to come and lay down on the.
Andrew Long.
Would you expect to see compaction below? That was 24 inches, you
Yes.
said? Would you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The question is, do we expect to see compaction beyond 24 inches deep? Sometimes we do, and I do soil profiles across Quebec, and very often I see compaction deeper than that. You know, as I mentioned earlier on this morning, manure spreading in the
To
spring
see no compaction.
in my
it has
area where I work
no
most
effect
often,
there. So if it
is the
has an
most
effect there,
damaging
it has
practice
an effect.
that I've seen.
Maybe not
You
40
can see
inches.
its effect
but-
for 10, 15, 20 years for one event of manure spreading in bad condition. It goes way, way beyond the plow layer.
And we're talking about 10 tons an axle here. So imagine when you use your 50 tons truck in a soil that is perfectly bare and has no structure into it. It has to be all done.
So that's what we talked a little bit this morning before everybody got here, a little bit about like controlled traffic in potato production, because especially in the fall with harvest, you know, you're going to have a lot of equipment in the field at one time with harvesters and windrowers and trucks. So, you know, in terms of a compaction control strategy, it would be important to try and concentrate your damage to as small an area as possible, right? And then try and mitigate those areas rather than have it spread all over the field.
Exactly, because one simple idea that can be easy to keep in mind is that 70% of the compaction effect is the result of the first pass. So if you run over all of your surface field area in a field, then you do compaction at 70% on 100% of the area. Whereas if you pass only at certain corridor, then you do compaction maybe at 90% compaction, but at only in specified area. Less work, less damaging, of course.
So Louis, just on that question, if we drove that subsoiler there across the field, and then we tilled it all up and got 8 inches of depth on the second pass, there would be more compaction on the second
Yeah,
pass than there would be on the first.
If
My
you go,
pers-
yeah, if you want to try it, just go over again, and you see how much more you can make. You can do that.
Yeah.
Just go around and come back, and you see how much higher they go.
Okay, do you want me to?
Hey, a picture is better than 1,000 words.
Let's go.
Il dit, si je repasse une autre fois, c'est quoi l'impact? Il peut juste repasser.
Ah, okay. You run over one more time.
Yeah.
Sometimes when we do that, farmers don't believe us. And I've seen days we went 5 times, and every time it shows. So it tells that it's not going to go as high, but you're going to have an increase all the time. Now I will need 2 volunteers. Who would be volunteers?
If they volunteer, they get a kickback.
Yeah. Okay.
If you volunteer, you get a free kickback.
So every time you go, you reach that depth. Every time.
The one closest this way moved the most. It's pulling up about that far. It stays that far. The other ones didn't move as much. But the one closest to us, the deepest one, moved the most.
You want it to go again?
Again.
Any question about that?
In a field, not every square inch is going to be driven over.
No.
So how far laterally does the compaction occur?
Good question. Very good question. It usually the compaction work as waves as it goes down. So deeper it goes down, wider it's gonna get too. But it depends again about humidity and dryness and type of soil and so on. But the depth is the thing that worries us the most. So you have to think, get your equipment as light as possible in any condition, and this is where you're gonna get the most out of it. And we understand again that it might look less efficient on a daytime, on a daily operation, saying that I have to take like twice much truck or whatever. It might look to be less efficient, but within few months, you're gonna get more yield out of it. And this is what efficiency should be accounted for. Very many times we see, oh, my yield is going down, and then we see it's the seed, it's the season, too much rain, not enough rain, and so on. 80% of the yield loss we have because of a poor soil health.
So that machine's 3-point hitch, which means the entire weight of it is being carried when you're turning. Would a pull type be less compaction, at least when you're turning on the ends?
But it's also a matter of balancing the equipment. You know? We noticed that the weight in front was way
Just half the
about
the
half
weight.
the weight of the, whereas it should be 35-65, around that. 35 in front.
It should be more 45-55. Right now it's 35-65.
So there needs to be more weight on the front? that what you say?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, because you were having your equipment lift off. But usually when you're going to be working in the field,
Yeah,
the equipment is going to be down.
that's right.
So the weight is going to be transferred a
Yeah.
little. So right now when the equipment is down, it's closer to 50-50.
Okay.
So to work in the field, it's probably well balanced. To travel in the road, it's not well balanced.
Any other questions for Louis and Odette?
I have one. Over here in the shade.
The hidden soldier.
Are you aware of anyone in Quebec that's doing zone tillage directly in front of their potato planter prior to planting?
No.
The situation in this field and a lot of fields across PEI today is people are going in trying to break up the hard pins, and that is present in a lot of places. But between now and the fall, they might apply glyphosate, they might want to spread manure, and they might want to run that device over to get the soil ready for planting next spring. Where do you? I guess it's in the grower's mind. Where do you start? If you're going in doing deep tillage today, you're saying basically you shouldn't do any of that afterwards, right?
Yeah, but you don't have a crop then. The season, the field is at rest. You're going to try to heal it, and you know you're not going to grow any crop on that field for this season, but next year it's going to be back into production. But you have a good point. It's a matter of making some compromise, you see, and this is an easy way to make compromises. Try to balance off a little bit better your equipment. Then you start already to see some improvement once you do that. So that's a very short term, a very easy way to start. Balance your equipment, weigh your equipment, know how much it weighs before going out in the field and do any kind of operation. Once you know that if you are 12 ton on the rear axle and you go out in the field and it's wet, okay, you can do it, but at least now you know that you're doing damage. It's up to you. Before that, prior to that, with many growers we worked with, they didn't even care and they didn't even know what damage they were doing, you see? So once, I'm not saying that, and we're not expecting for 1 minute, but that from now on, everything will be avoided, no more damage and all that. We know that it's a long-term process, but the first step is to know the damage you're doing. And then afterwards you find ways. It's the same with everything that we talked this morning. We noticed that the soil aggregation is deficient. How do you manage? What exactly should I be doing? You start to think about it today, for example. It's going to take some time before you find the right solutions. But we've given some hints: cover crops, rotation, less tillage, intercrops, you know, that sort of thing. And trying different kind of intercrops and different species of cover crops as well might bring some more solution. But tire pressure, equipment balancing are easy first steps to be performed. Yes,
and sharing information. And what I would add to what you said is, you said that you're doing that type of a work so that the soil is going to be ready to plant next spring, right? But what is a soil ready to be planted? If you're doing that kind of a work, then you're going to leave this soil from now to the planting about 6 months completely bare and completely dead. So physically it's going to be easier to plant, but for the seed itself, it's probably not the optimum environment to germinate and grow as much as it wants.
Yeah, I guess the timing of all that depends farm by farm decision.
Exactly. So
Some people put glyphosate on last week, and people did not put it on until October.
So try to think about soil, profile, roots, and it might change the way the strategy are being planned today.
And knowledge is the most important commodity on a farm, from what I see. And this morning was an excellent example on John's field here, which has been managed with a very, very good rotation. Are there many in Quebec anyway? I can tell there are not too many growers who are at this stage yet. But seeing what I've seen today, if they could see this, then they move forward. And it's basically the same in Quebec, because some growers are ahead of the others, and they're implementing different practices, and they're having success. So it'll have its effect in the long run, I'm pretty sure.